Welcome to the 2020 Booker Prize ceremony, live from the magnificently empty Roundhouse in Camden in London, brought to you by Front Row. As this place is usually bursting with people and music, we've tried to keep the usual Roundhouse spirit alive tonight, though socially distanced, as you can see. But we do have some actual live performance in the shape of a quartet from the Keneally Orchestra. Great to hear you. And there's going to be more from Keneally coming up later. It will be a starry night here to reflect on this year's Booker Prize and the importance of literature in this very unusual year. We'll hear from Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, and from the former President of the United States, Barack Obama. Tonight is a celebration of the written word, and we'll be joined by listeners on BBC Radio 4 live in 15 minutes to hear who has won the £50,000 Booker Prize. You can see the shortlisted authors on screen now, joining us from all around the world. There they are: Diane Cook, Tsitsi Dangarembga, Anvi Doshi, Maaza Mengiste, Douglas Stuart, and Brandon Taylor, Booker Prize nominees. Great to have you here. Tonight, whether they win or lose, each of the 6 shortlisted authors will be presented with their own specially bound copy of their book, individually handcrafted, and each of those bespoke books takes around 150 hours to create. Very, very special items. With me here in the Roundhouse are the chair of the judges, Margaret Busby, and Bernardine Evaristo, last year's winner. She'll be chatting to her co-winner, Margaret Atwood. But first, I'm delighted to say that we're joined from his home by one of only 2 living authors who have won both the Booker and the Nobel Prize in Literature, Kazu Ishiguro. He is the author, of course, of many celebrated books, several of them shortlisted for the Booker Prize over the years, including An Artist of the Floating World, The Remains of the Day, When We Were Orphans, and Never Let Me Go. The Remains of the Day, of course, won in 1989 and was made into an Oscar-nominated film starring Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins. In 2017, he was awarded the Nobel Prize, and then last year, he was knighted. Hello, Kazu. Sir Kazu, I should say. Great to have you here. Very different circumstances. Take yourself back to 1989. It was black tie dinner at the Guildhall, I guess. What do you remember of that night?
Well, it's a very, very different night, I should say. And actually, you know, the last few years I've been there, it's been much the same. The Booker Prize has been much the same until this year. But in a funny sort of way, I think it might actually, you know, this year's version might actually reflect something of the reality of what we're celebrating, because, you know, writing is actually, it's all about spending, you know, years and years sometimes, you know, writing on your own in a little room, and then somebody reads the thing in a little room all by themselves. So in some kind of way, this perhaps reflects the activity we're celebrating. And my heart does go out to the 6 authors. I mean, I think this is, I mean, I congratulate them. It's fantastic for them, but it is quite a tough time, this ceremony. And actually, in some ways, it might be easier for them as well. They're by themselves or with their loved ones at home. It can be quite tough to actually have to sit through this very public dinner where weird, jolly strangers keep coming up to you and smiling and chatting, and all the time inside you have these emotions rolling. So, you know, but in many ways, this is closer to what, you know, reading and writing is all about, and that's why it's so important. We make a very deep connection because we spend so much time creating it on our own and then consuming it on our own.
What did the Booker do for you? I mean, you won in '89, but nominated 3 or 4 times. I mean, what does the Booker mean to you, Ish?
Well, the Booker's a big deal. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's a big deal prize, and yes, you know, it changed my career and so on. But I mean, over the years, what I've really come to appreciate about the Booker Prize, I really like it when the Booker Prize actually shines a light on a career of some writer that's been writing very brilliantly, but far from the limelight. And perhaps they're already middle-aged and perhaps suffering neglect. And the Booker Prize is very good at shining the light on those kinds of careers. And then we as readers suddenly we find ourselves not just with the winning book, but with a kind of a mature body of work. And this happened, last couple of years with Bernardine Evaristo and Anna Burns. But actually, it's hard to remember now, but Hilary Mantel, when she first won, that was the case with her. She'd gone into her 50s with not much attention. And A.S. Byatt's another one. I mean, these are people who've become very much part of our canon. And this is what I think the Booker Prize does brilliantly. I wasn't really like that. I was very young when I won it, but I really like it when the Booker Prize can do that, because I really respect the way writers can diligently carry on and on, away from rewards and glamour, because they really believe in what they're doing.
And the Booker can help kick open the door for a young author, as you say that. The Nobel is a very different thing. It's for a body of work. It's almost a Lifetime Achievement Award. I know you've got a lot more to write about in your life, though. How different did you regard the Nobel?
They're very different prizes. And what's interesting is that they're almost polar opposites in the way that they kind of they appear. They make their presence felt to the author. The Nobel is very, very secretive. So you don't have a suspicion that you're in the running or that you've won it. At 10:30 in the morning, you're having a late breakfast, thinking about washing your hair. 11 o'clock, you're a Nobel Prize winner, and there are 17 film crews outside your door. That's how they do it. The Booker does the polar opposite. Every round is kind of made very public, long list, short list, and then like tonight, the final. But what's important, John, I think, to remember is that there is another very important round after tonight. This isn't the final round. The really important round that comes after this is with the readers. Will the general public take the Booker winner to heart? And when you look back over the half century or so of the Booker Prize, you can see that some Booker Prize winners have gone on to become classics. They're absolute classics. Others have fallen by the wayside. So it's the Booker Prize is like a dating agency. It's introducing a book to the reading public, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so the really big, important round is the one after this.
Kazuo Ishiguro, thank you so much. So Kazuo Ishiguro, great to talk to you. Wise words there for all the Booker nominees. Now, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, is well known to be an avid reader and a keen promoter of literacy skills. She's presented the Booker Prize many times. Here are Her Royal Highness's thoughts on tonight's celebrations.
It's a huge pleasure to be with you this evening, albeit in a disembodied form, to mark the 52nd Booker Prize. Many years ago, in my long-lost youth, one of my favourite books was National Velvet, written by the formidable Enid Bagnold. In later life, Enid was asked why she had chosen to become an author, and I wondered if her reply might resonate with some of you. Who wants to become a writer, and why? Because it's the answer to everything. It's the streaming reason for living. To note, to pin down, to build up, to create, to be astonished at nothing, to cherish the oddities, to let nothing go down the drain, to make a great flower out of life, even if it's a cactus. For many people, this year has been a bit of a cactus. If the cactus lovers amongst you will forgive me. But as Enid says, writers have the power to turn a cactus into a great flower. While COVID deprived us of so many cultural pleasures, live music, theatre, cinema, art galleries, even being together in the flesh this evening, we have at least been able to read. As long as we can read, we can travel, we can escape, we can explore, we can laugh, we can cry, and we can grapple with life's mysteries. For all these reasons, this year's Booker Prize is even more important than usual. It provides an opportunity to reflect on the richness of English language literature. It allows us to give thanks for the transformative power of books, which change cacti into flowers. It demonstrates the vastness and closeness of the literary community. And, above all, it celebrates wonderful writers who share their gifts to strengthen, provoke, move, and comfort their readers. Congratulations to the shortlisted authors, and thank you. We will very shortly find out the name of the winner. In the meantime, let me leave you with a second quote from Enid Bagnold, which applies both to the writers and the readers amongst us. If I had my life over again, I'd have thought more about words and thought more about them earlier. Thank you.
Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, on the power of words and books. The atmosphere is charged here in the Roundhouse. Now, I promise you it is. In just a few minutes, we will join Radio 4 and find out who has won the 2020 Booker Prize. But we promised you some more wonderful live performance. And here, at a safe distance from each other, are members of Chineke, Europe's first majority black and Asian ethnically diverse orchestra. We have Elodie Chausner-Howells on violin, Batania Johnny also on violin, Jesse Francis on viola, and Elliot Bailey on cello. They're performing String Quartet No. 3 by Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de St. George. Take it away. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much to Chineke Quartet, members of the Chineke Orchestra, performing their part of Joseph Bologne's String Quartet number 3 in G minor. We're about 30 seconds or so away from joining Radio 4 listeners. We're going to let in some of the magic of broadcasting here. We wouldn't normally show this part. We've just got a few seconds to fill. I was just struck really how beautiful that was to hear live music in such a fantastic music venue after so many months. Incredibly moving to hear that. Well, we're about to join Front Row, so sit tight as we welcome listeners from Radio 4. Hello and welcome to a virtually empty but architecturally glorious roundhouse in Camden, North London, where you join us live tonight for a very special edition of Front Row, the announcement of the winner of the 2020 Booker Prize. There aren't many of us here, and we are socially distanced, of course, but there's plenty from within and beyond the walls of the roundhouse to create a real sense of occasion as we hear from no less than former President Barack Obama and Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall. And as we're in the roundhouse, we need music tonight. Viewers on iPlayer, where we're simulcasting tonight's ceremony, will already have heard from our quartet of musicians from Chineke Orchestra. They will be playing for us later in the show. But with me now are this year's Chair of the Judges, Margaret Busby, and also Bernardine Evaristo, who of course won the prize herself last year alongside Margaret Atwood. Hello to both of you. Bernardine, it must be a very different situation that you find yourself in. I guess pressure's off this year to an extent. Are you feeling a bit more relaxed?
I'm feeling incredibly relaxed. You know, last year was so high pressured, and you know, there's a 5-hour ceremony before you actually get announced as the winner, as I did. So I'm just really enjoying today.
Wonderful. Sorry, no banquet, no dinner for you tonight.
That's fine.
And Margaret, you're announcing the award here live on Front Row in about 40 minutes' time. Yes. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling looking forward to it, but I'm also feeling for the shortlisted writers who are there wondering who's going to be. But it's been a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without my wonderful co-judges. I should name them. There's Lee Child, Emily Wilson, Lemn, Sissay, Samir Rahim. You know, we were all in this wonderful adventure together.
Margaret Busby and Bernardine Evaristo, thank you both very much. And we'll be talking to you again very shortly. But let me remind you, first of all, of the 2020 Booker Prize shortlist in strictly alphabetical order. It's Diane Cook with The New Wilderness, about a mother's battle to save her daughter in a world ravaged by climate change. Tsitsi Dangarembga for This Mournable Body, a tensely charged account of a woman on the edge in Harare in Zimbabwe. Avni Doshi with Burnt Sugar, set in India. A grown-up daughter has to take care of a mother who hasn't taken care of her. Maaza Mengiste with The Shadow King, set against the backdrop of Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia in the 1930s. Douglas Stuart with Shuggie Bain, a Glasgow set story of the ties between an addicted mother and her young son. And Brandon Taylor with Real Life, a painfully detailed story of microaggressions experienced by a young black American student. We'll be hearing more from each of them about their books throughout the evening, with readings from a world-class cast, including Tandy Newton and Papa Esiodu, recorded at the Old Vic Theatre as we build toward the winner's announcement. First, let's go back in time, this time last year, which really does feel worlds away, and to the shock announcement that 2 authors had won the 2019 Booker Prize. Margaret Atwood first won the Booker in 2000 for The Blind Assassin. Last year she won for The Testaments, with Bernardine Evaristo winning for Girl, Woman, Other. Bernardine was the first black woman to win the prize. The split decision, technically against the rules, caused a bit of a furore, but didn't diminish the warmth between the 2 authors. Here they are reflecting on that moment.
The 2 winners of the 2019 Booker Prize for Fiction are Margaret Atwood for The Testaments and Bernardine Evaristo for Girl, Woman, Other.
Now you're quite big. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I think you've had one heck of a year, Bernie.
I really have. It's been a total blast, actually.
No end in sight.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna quieten down next year, but it's been so long coming that I couldn't just shut myself away and not, extract the maximum from it in every way possible. That's what I've done.
How old are you?
Me, I'm 61.
Well, you're about the same age that I was when the same thing happened to me.
Yes, how was that?
Well, it was very weird because, of course, there was this long-standing tradition of my not winning the Booker. So it was so lots of times at the Booker, but no cigar.
Yeah.
Then there was a cigar, and what I was mostly thinking of was that I'd worn the wrong shoes. I'd got these new shoes, and of course you should never do that because they were pinchy. So I was hobbling around on the night of thinking that was really stupid. But, fashion choices matter, Bernie.
They do, absolutely. So what's the difference winning the Booker this time round for you compared to the first time?
I'm older.
Well, for me, I don't think... Well, it didn't happen before, and I don't think it would have happened until this moment, to be honest, for me. And, it took 50 years, didn't it, for a black woman to win the prize. And the culture had shifted in between you being up for it with The Handmaid's Tale and Girl, Woman, Other. The culture had shifted, especially in the last few years.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm very aware of that. It's very interesting, after I won the Booker, I was really worried about getting run over. I have no anxiety problems whatsoever, but it was because it was so good that I thought I'm going to get run over. They're going to take it away from me by a car.
By a car or a bus.
Or a bus.
But you didn't get run over.
No.
That's good.
You didn't get run over, Bernadine. So good to see that rapport, that friendship between the two of you. Just take me back to that moment. What was it like when you heard your name read out and Margaret Atwood's at the same time?
Well, Margaret's name came first and then my name. And I was just ecstatic because I wanted the prize. I knew it would be a career changer for me. And so then I got up and we kind of hugged and we walked on stage hand in hand and formed a bond straight away. And it was for me, it was a magical moment. I'll never forget it.
No, I remember that. It was so touching to see the two of you there united. How has your life changed? You just touched on it there. How has your life changed in the last year?
Well, my daily life hasn't changed. I still do the laundry and, watch television in the evening and so on. But I feel like I was launched out into the world as a writer, having written professionally for 40 years, and suddenly everybody knew who I was, and my book sold into many languages and became a bestseller, and I had so many invitations. It's actually a real honour and a privilege to be asked to be interviewed by the media and so on, and that's what happened. And so I've had an amazing year, yeah.
And a historic win, of course. You were the first black woman to win the Booker Prize. The significance of that for you?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, but also for many people. And also because I was an older woman. And so it gave people a lot of hope. People of colour, black women in particular, black British women in particular, and older women, that you can be in this game for a very long time and then break through at a later age.
You've been doing so many interviews. I know it has been very busy. Have you had time to write? Have you been writing
I have,
in
actually.
lockdown? The next novel?
Not the next novel, but I have been writing lots and lots of various commissions and so on. A lot of non-fictions from short stories, monologues and so on. And also I'm beginning to write my next book.
And so many of us, anecdotally, so many people have been talking about the reading that they've been doing during lockdown. Have you, been devouring books maybe that you wouldn't have been reading ordinarily?
I have to keep up with my peers, so I have been doing a lot of reading, but it's a lot of the stuff that I would normally read.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, the spike in sales, so many publishers have said, they have had a good year. And also the sort of books as well. I mean, you think about Rennie Edo-Lodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. I mean, one of the books which seems to have seen a spike chiming with Black Lives Matter. Something has shifted within publishing and reading, hasn't it?
Definitely. I mean, when Black Lives Matter happened, a lot of reading lists were curated with Black and Asian writers on them. And suddenly the chart charts were full of books by Black and Asian writers, and that has never happened before. And also the publishing industry kind of woke up to the fact that they haven't been as inclusive as they need to be. And so I know that there are various measures in place right now to start to address some of those issues.
You're not worried about getting run over anymore. You put that fear to one side. Just enjoy being a Booker Prize winner. Thank you very much, Bernardine Evaristo. A reminder that Barack Obama and Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall are yet to come. But first, throughout this evening, we'll be hearing from this year's shortlisted authors in their own words and in pairs, in strictly alphabetical order, followed by readings by a starry cast recorded on stage at the Old Vic Theatre, directed by Katie Rudd. First, Diane Cook talks about her book, The New Wilderness, which will be read by Anne-Marie Duff.
The New Wilderness takes place in the near future, and it imagines that there's only one wilderness area left in a country that has been developed and inhabited and ruined in other ways. Secretly, or maybe not so secretly, the book is about mothers and daughters. Bea is a mother, Agnes is her daughter, and they have gone to the wilderness state in order to save Agnes's life. I just wanted it to feel complicated and real and a little uncomfortable for people, because I think those are all the feelings that I've had in my life about both of my roles. I really wanted to have on the page a mother who's a person and not just a mother. I wanted her to be able to make the ultimate sacrifice and also not be super happy about it because I think that's real.
They had seen a lot of death. They had become hardened to it. Not just the community members who had perished in grisly or mundane ways, but around them, everything died openly. Dying was as common as living. They worried about one another, of course, but when one of them ceased surviving for whatever reason, they closed ranks and put their energy into what remained alive. This was an unanticipated outcome of living in the wilderness. But it had happened quickly and cleanly. There used to be a cultural belief in an era before she was born that having close ties to nature made one a better person. And when they first arrived in the wilderness, they imagined living there might make them more sympathetic, better, more attuned people. But they came to understand there'd been a great misunderstanding about what better meant. It's possible it simply meant better at being human, and left the definition of the word human up for interpretation. It might have only meant better at surviving, anywhere, by any means.
Anne-Marie Duff reading from Diane Cook's The New Wilderness. Now to Tsitsi Dangarembga. Her extract is read by Tandy Newton.
This Mournable body is about a woman called Tambudzai who lives in Harare. It's set in the 1990s, and that is the time that the economic implosion in Zimbabwe began. Zimbabweans are stunned. We don't quite know how we have come to be where we are. There was so much hope at independence. We were so sure that our education was going to stand us in good stead as a nation. And it seems that that hasn't been the case. And this does parallel the experience that Tambudzai has had. African women are meant to be superwomen. They're meant to be able to take everything, never break down. I wanted the book to really resonate with readers, especially young female readers in Zimbabwe and on the continent. It was really important for me to make sure that they could say, oh, I am in that book.
Another combi arrives, spewing fumes. Everyone splutters, and when the air clears again, you will gape at a young woman who is threading her way through the stalls of fruit and vegetables toward the combis. She is elegant on sky-high heels, in spite of the rubble and the cracks in the paving. She pushes out every bit of her body that can protrude. Lips, hips, breasts, and buttocks to greatest effect. Her hands end in pointed black and gold nails. She holds several carrier bags that shout neon and other boutique names in huge, jagged letters. She sways the bags languidly as she does her body. You gape as much as anyone else, recognition stirring. The young woman sachets over to a combi. Fascia, fascia. Fascia, fascia, she goes, like that, all her parts moving with the assurance of a woman who knows she is beautiful. The crowd shifts and regroups. Men inside and outside combis exhale sharply. Windows mist. You stir, too. Your breath stops in your throat as you finally identify the newcomer. It is your hostel mate, Gertrude.
Tandy Newton reading from This Mournable Body by Tsitsi Dangarembga. More from our authors later. Those who have been with us for the live stream on iPlayer will know that we heard earlier from Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall, who is a passionate reader and advocate for literacy and has presented the Booker Prize many times over the years. Here's an extract from what she had to say.
While COVID deprived us of so many cultural pleasures, live music, theatre, cinema, art galleries, even being together in the flesh this evening, we have at least been able to read. As long as we can read, we can travel, we can escape, we can explore, we can laugh, we can cry, and we can grapple with life's mysteries.
Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall on the power of literature. Somebody who doesn't need to be reminded of that is Margaret Busby, the chair of this year's Booker Prize judges. She's enjoyed an extraordinary career, culminating in this year being voted one of the 100 great Black Britons. Born in Ghana, she came to Britain as a child and in 1967 co-founded the publishers Allison and Busby, a company that she ran for 20 years. In 1992, she published a highly acclaimed and influential anthology, Daughters of Africa, featuring writing by women of African descent from ancient Egypt to the present. Her follow-up, New Daughters of Africa, was published last year. Zadie Smith has said that Margaret Busby helped change the landscape of both UK publishing and arts coverage. Lovely to hear that, Margaret, I'm sure. I have to know how the judging process has gone. I know you paid tribute to your fellow judges earlier. Are you all still talking, all still friends?
Yes, well, the interesting thing is we've never all been in the same room at the same time. So I'm looking forward to that happening. But we bonded across Zoom meetings that lasted hours. And it was a really interesting experience, wonderful to have the feedback from all these intelligent people who covered the whole range of the industry, from writers to editors to publishers to reviewers to readers. So we were able to sort of have intelligent discussions, to persuade each other, to reread, it was wonderful.
I think it's a fabulously vibrant list that you've come up with. And everybody's been talking about it as a very diverse list. Was that something you set out to achieve?
Absolutely not. We didn't set out to tick boxes or to even look for anything. We were judging what was eligible, what came our way, and we had to whittle down this wonderful pile of 162 books down to our Booker dozen long list of 13, which, it was quite a task. So we were having to say goodbye to a lot of books that actually we admired for one reason or another, and we got to our long list and we got to our short list, and we were still talking, we're still friends, we haven't had tantrums or anything, and it's been a really, really enlightening experience, and I'm glad that I've had to do it, although it's not been easy all the time, doing that sort of thing under pressure, but here we are.
I know you're probably reluctant to talk about this because you don't want to talk about the books that are left off, but it was quite a shock that Hilary Mantel was left off. No regrets about that?
Well, I don't think it was necessarily something that was deliberately done. I mean, the Booker isn't a prize for judging a lifetime body of work. It's for an individual book. And Hilary was on the long list, so we're not saying it wasn't a good book, but we'd like to focus on the books that did get along to the shortlist. And I think the ones that got on the shortlist, as you've heard some of the things already said about them, were really well worth having their place on that shortlist.
4 debut novels on this list. What does that say about the state of publishing?
Again, that wasn't a deliberate choice. And sometimes, although somebody is considered the debut novelist, they may have been writing for years before they were published. So, you know, that sense of accomplishment is already there. But I think it just shows you there are interesting things being done by people at every age, whether they're younger or older. And I think that's what we see in the long list debuts.
No, absolutely. I think that shows that novel is in really, really good health. I mentioned a moment ago about your long career in publishing, and you running Alison and Busby for 20 years.
You're trying to say I'm really old.
Come on, we've known each other for a long time. But how has publishing changed in that time since you started?
Well, publishing still has a long way to go, but publishing certainly has changed in terms of, well, we heard earlier, the sorts of books that are being published, the numbers, the writers who are being published. But I think the industry itself still has some way to go in terms of including people from a different demographic, so that we have people from different classes, different ethnicities, different regions of the country, so that we're seeing a wider perspective on literature as a whole.
Thank you very much, Margaret Busby. Now we return to our shortlisted authors. First up, Avni Doshi on her book Burnt Sugar, her Indian set novel, including an episode when a mother and daughter enter an ashram. It will be followed by a reading from the Old Vic by Aisha Dhaka.
Burnt Sugar is the story of a mother and daughter who have a really difficult relationship. And after the mother is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, the daughter is faced with the difficult decision of how to look after the woman who never really cared for her when she was a child. It really goes into the kind of conflict we all feel when we love someone very deeply, even though we don't like them very much. I finished writing the novel by the time I got pregnant for the first time. I was actually worried, am I going to look back on the story and am I going to think, you know, I got a lot of it wrong? And in a way, I was quite happy to see that I guess I got quite a bit of it right. You know, it's a really polarizing book in a lot of ways. And so people have had really varying responses to the novel. And I do understand that some people have found it unsettling. And I actually take that as a compliment in a way, because some of my favorite books have actually unsettled me.
In the ashram, some people wept like overwrought children when they saw Baba, while others sobbed silently. There was a lady whose skin looked like milk curdling in tea, and she fell to her knees, shaking as he passed by. Then she touched Ma's feet too. But most people at the ashram were dabblers. That's what Kali Mata liked to say. She turned her nose up at that type. The ones who sampled everything on the market. They were promiscuous in their beliefs, like fickle lovers. They discussed their ambivalence openly in front of Baba, wore blue jeans under their kurtas and cut off their sleeves to sun their dark shoulders. Vegetable sellers set up stalls and pawn shops proliferated just beyond the ashram gate for these occasional visitors. They sold white chemises and pants, ready-made, in different sizes and styles. And then there were those who pulled their clothes off in the meditation hall and, bare-breasted, lay on the ground, arms and legs spread, eyes rolling back, cackling. Those were the ones I will never forget. And Baba, laughing, clapping his hands.
Aisha Dhaka reading from Avni Doshi's Burnt Sugar. Maaza Mengiste's novel The Shadow King is set in Ethiopia when Mussolini invaded in 1935. It will be read by Nina Shoshanya.
I was interested in telling the war the way that I imagined it, which was very influenced by Homer and the Iliad. I imagined this as a Trojan War. I wanted to write about women in war because I discovered through my research that they existed, but they were really fragments of lines that were in articles, in letters, in telegrams. I wanted to write history from the perspective of the voices that are often ignored even within their own communities because they're too poor or they're not from the right family. I was interested in these moments of camaraderie and friendships and sometimes tenderness I would find alongside the ravages of war. And that really was where the book came alive for me.
No firing. Hold fire. What's this? Ettore looks up so fast his helmet tips backward. Who's she? The lone soldier is a delicate-featured girl in uniform. A solitary Abyssinian floating above grass, moving effortlessly between the horsemen, captivating and surreal. Fofi drops his gun and presses both hands on his helmet, pushing thick wrinkles across his forehead. Santa Maria, she's crazy. The sky has opened up above the awkward vision, and a pool of light heralds her descent. Behind her, the horsemen have backed away. They are arranged now in a straight row, splendid in their white, their rifles and spears pointed up as they stare at the young woman. The soldati hold their breath as she carves an uneasy silence into the valley. Over the hill in the next valley there is the faint rumble of a fight, of shouts, of gunfire, but in this place where the earth lies flat and grassy between two jagged peaks, there is nothing but the isolated figure slowing her steps until she is walking, bewildered, until she is standing meters in front of them, directly in front of Ettore, pointing at her chest and saying, boom.
Nina Sosanya reading there from Maaza Mengiste's The Shadow King. We'll hear from the final two authors shortly. I'd like to welcome viewers of the BBC News Channel and the BBC World News Now who have just joined us. We head now to America, where it seems some presidents just can't let go and accept the quiet life of retirement. I refer, of course, to Barack Obama, who has just published the memoir A Promised Land, which is already breaking records for sales. Mr. Obama is another big reader, regularly rounding up his picks of the year. A certain girl, woman, other featured on his list last year. Bernadine, good to hear that. Barack Obama wanted to share his thoughts with this year's Booker audience. Here he is.
To write a book is no easy task. Believe me, I know. So I just wanted to take a moment to extend my congratulations and admiration to the authors shortlisted for the 2020 Booker Prize. I've always turned to writing to try and make sense of our world, both as a young man trying to navigate different parts of my life and as an elected official trying to bridge our divides and find a way for all of us to move forward. Still, I am always impressed by authors who can write incredible works of fiction, even if that's what my critics call my speeches. Reading beautiful works of fiction late at night from Booker Prize listed authors like Marilyn Robinson, Colson Whitehead, Bernardine Evaristo, and so many others offered me a brief respite from the daily challenges of the presidency. And at their best, Booker Prize listed books remind me of fiction's power to help us put ourselves in someone else's shoes, understand their struggles, and imagine new ways to tackle complex problems and affect change. So I also want to salute the Booker Prize Foundation for its work to encourage people to read more fiction and to promote the art of reading for the public benefit. And congratulations to all the finalists.
Barack Obama, a man of great literary taste. Now to our two final shortlisted authors. Here's Douglas Stuart on his book Shuggie Bain. It will be read at the Old Vic by Stuart Campbell.
Shuggie Bain is a love story. It's really looking at that sort of unconditional, often tested love that children can have for flawed parents. The Glasgow that I grew up in, I'd always known it to be sort of run by women. I am the queer son of a single mother who actually lost her own battle with addiction when I was a child. It's a very funny book, it's a tender book, and there's a lot of sort of intimacy and love in the book. And I think that's the Glaswegian spirit. You know, growing up in Glasgow was, I think, probably one of the greatest inspirations of my life. How can you take this sort of really tough but tender city and look at the people who are sort of making their way in it, and have, like, as a writer, how can it not sort of put these roots into your soul that you want to just keep writing about and writing about and writing about?
Agnes's face was very thickly made up, and it looked to Shuggie like the paint had been layered over several other faces that she'd forgotten to take off first. The boy followed her at a discreet distance, stopping now and then to gather up things that fell from the pocket of her matted mink coat. As Agnes stoated through the infirmary's automatic doors, a concerned nurse ran over, thinking she was in need of attention. Shuggie watched the girl try to corral his mother and slip her gently into a tatty wheelchair. Agnes pushed past the nurse and went in the direction of the oncology wards. Shuggie heard the nurse say to a male attendant that she thought for sure Agnes was a working girl. "She is not," said Shuggie quite proudly. "My mother's never worked a day in her life. She's far too good looking for that."
Stuart Campbell reading from Douglas Stuart's novel Shuggie Bain. Finally, Brandon Taylor on Real Life, read by Papa Essiedu.
The novel is set in a very lightly fictionalized Madison, Wisconsin, which is a place where I spent 4 or 5 years studying biochemistry as a graduate student. I decided to write a campus novel because, first and foremost, I'm a fan of the form and genre. Except this time, I'm going to put a queer Black protagonist at the center of it. One of the tensions the novel tries to unpack is this idea of like what it's like to be a Black person in academia. That was the material that I drew most directly on my own life experience. Every racist thing that has happened to Wallace in the novel, are, you know, those are things that people have said or done to me, or said or done to close friends of mine. Wallace is someone who is quite lonely, but loves being around other people, but finds himself uncomfortable when people look his way. Think of him as being sort of the quintessential sort of conflicted, anxious young person who's trying to figure out what they want from life, and they keep making mistakes, but they keep trying just the same. I think that the novel is playing with ideas of like loneliness and togetherness and the ways that we are, sometimes within the span of a single moment, both connected to others and, you know, left out all alone.
Wallace drank so much coffee that the world seemed a little brighter for it, on the verge of turning convex, as if every fragment of light were reaching out for him. And then one day, Henrik gave him a piece of advice. Caffeine is a stimulant. This was mystifying to Wallace. It seemed like a fake aphorism. Henrik said it to him every time Wallace returned from the basement cafe with a cup of coffee. Whenever he and Henrik were in the elevator together, returning from a seminar at which Wallace had helped himself to one complimentary cup after another, his heart fluttered, his mouth went dry, his fingertips grew stiff and swollen. He felt as if he were being squeezed through his skin like sausage from its casing. He was startled by strange sounds in the middle of the night when he was working in the lab alone. One day, during his dissections, his hand convulsed wildly, a sudden shooting spasm, and he dropped the scalpel. It landed with a soft, sick sink into his thigh. Not terribly deep, but enough. And Wallace knew in that moment exactly what Henrik had meant.
Papa Essiedu, reading from Brandon Taylor's Real Life, the last of our Booker shortlisted titles. The moment is almost upon us, but before we hear who has won this year's Booker Prize for Fiction, I just quickly want to come back to Bernardine Evaristo. We're about to hear who the winner is. How do you think, Bernardine, how will their lives change?
Their career will change probably beyond their wildest imaginings. They'll certainly be in demand. I think they should ride the wave of attention for a while, and they'll find readers for their books, for their precious works of art. People will be reading it in huge numbers. And then at some point they need to come back down to earth and get back to writing. But to enjoy the moment, I would recommend.
I'm looking at the faces of all 6 shortlisted authors at the moment. Thank you very much, Bernardine. And the time has now come to announce the winner of the 2020 Booker Prize for Fiction. The shortlisted authors are waiting all around the world at home. Can I ask Margaret Busby, the chair of the judges, to take a place there at the lectern and make the announcement? Margaret.
Thank you. You've now had a taste of what makes these 6 titles so special. There's been discussion in the press about how diverse a shortlist it is in terms of class, ethnicity, gender identity. People have felt held back from remarking also on the makeup of the jury, and that's as it should be. There'll be no need for comment on diversity anywhere in the literary world once it is commonplace. So note how progressive the Booker Prize is becoming. It was established in 1969, the same year when the publishing company I co-founded brought out its first novel. Yet the first black Booker judge was in 2015. Undoubtedly, the Booker Prize has always championed great literature, but it was eye-opening to discover that just in the past handful of years, there have been more black judges and chairs of the jury than in the previous 5 decades. I return often to the wisdom of Toni Morrison, who in her 1992 essay, Black Matters, wrote, "The ability of writers to imagine what is not the self, to familiarize the strange and mystify the familiar, is a test of their power. Discovering great literature depends on freeing the imagination, being open to welcoming the new, not erecting barriers against a perceived threat from the unknown, the unfamiliar, the alien." I don't think I'm breaking the rules to say this. Please read all the books on the shortlist. Please don't forget any of them. They will certainly all remain part of my life forever. So, now is the time to reveal the winner of the 2020 Booker Prize. My very astute co-judges and I have chosen an outstanding winner, and that is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart.
There it is. Thank you very much, Margaret Busby, Chair of the Judge. The winner of the 2020 Booker Prize is Douglas Stuart for Shuggie Bain. Douglas, I know you're looking absolutely shocked there. Let me just invite you just to say a few words, a speech.
Sorry, I'm absolutely stunned. I didn't expect that at all. I'd like to, first of all, just thank my mother. I think I've been clear that my mother is in every page of this book, and without her, I wouldn't be here, and my work wouldn't be here. I would like to thank my fellow finalists. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to be in your company, and I can't wait to give you all a hug. Thank you to the Booker judges for recognizing Shuggie Bain. I know I'm only the 2nd Scottish book in 50 years to have won, and that means, I think, a lot for regional voices, for working class stories, and so thank you. Thank you to the people of Scotland, especially Glaswegians, whose empathy and humour and love and struggle are in every word of this book. To my Shuggie family, everyone at Picador UK, the incredible Ravi Merchandani, Camilla Elworthy, Anna Stein, Lucy Luck, Claire Nozeres, to Grove Atlantic in New York, who were the only people who actually took a risk on my book, and especially Peter Blackstock, my very, very courageous editor, sorry. I wouldn't be able to be here without my husband and without his support. So Michael, Keri, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You supported me for 12 years while I wrote this book, and you always had faith in me, and that lets me know I married the right man. Thank you. And to everybody, to all the readers who have just come out and let me know that Shuggie and Agnes have touched their lives. I can't believe this, but the greatest gift is just to be able to connect with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Douglas, congratulations. I know we spoke on Front Row a couple of weeks ago, and you were telling me about how personal this book is. It is a work of fiction, obviously, but there are autobiographical elements. Just tell us something about what it has meant for you to write this book, to express this story.
Yeah. I grew up in Glasgow in the 1980s, which was an incredibly tough time for a lot of people there. And my mother, unfortunately, suffered with addiction and didn't survive that addiction. She died when I was still a child. And so for 30 years, I've carried an awful lot of sort of loss and love and pain. And I wanted really just to tell the story of what it was like to grow up queer in Glasgow, to grow up with a parent who you loved but you couldn't save. And Shuggie is a work of fiction, it is. But writing the book was incredibly healing for me. I think men from the west coast of Scotland are not ever expected to be able to express their feelings or their finer feelings. And so art is a great receptacle for that. And to be able to connect with people and to ask for empathy from readers, and they've really given it, has been just hugely cathartic.
As you say, you lost your mum, as you say, Douglas, but I mean, what would this moment mean to her, do you think?
You know, my mother and women like my mother were never voiceless. By God, they could roar. They could roar. They had such powerful voices. But I think society doesn't often like to look. And I think right now, as we are polarizing as a society and a lot of poor people are being left behind, you know, it terrifies me. My mother would be thrilled. My mother would be absolutely thrilled, and I think she would be proud.
As you mentioned, you know, the second Scottish book to win the Booker Prize. You're following on from James Kelman, How Late It Was, How Late. I think that's a book which is an influence on you, isn't it? One of your favourites?
It is, absolutely. I think it's behind me here on the shelf. It is my Bible. And, you know, as Margaret and Bernadine were saying, when James won in the mid-90s, it was seen, Scottish voices were seen as something really disruptive and outside of the norm. And now to see Shuggie at the sort of the centre of it is, I can't express it.
It's a book which doesn't always show Glasgow in the best light, but I think there's great affection for that city in this book as well, isn't there?
There is, and the Glaswegian spirit is to tell things very bluntly, even if they're incredibly difficult things. But as much as there is violence in the book, there's enormous tenderness. As much as there's sadness, I hope there's a lot of humour, and that is the Glaswegian spirit.
A debut, Douglas, a debut novel winning the Booker Prize. Where next? Are you already on to the next book?
Yes, I'm actually excited to tell you that hopefully we can tell you about that really shortly, but I'm writing about more love. I think I'm always looking for a sense of belonging in an isolated place. I love gentle souls in really hard situations, and so my second book is complete, and I can't wait to introduce you to the characters in it.
It's complete, it's already written.
It is already written, yeah. I've been writing for a long time, actually, even as a debut novelist, and it's been about 14 years I've been working on this body of work, and it's just been in the past couple of months that people have gotten to know me and my work.
And the day job is fashion, isn't it? You're talking to us from New York in fashion. Do you stay in fashion, or is this now the move into full-time writing, do you think?
Oh, that's a big question. I always wanted to be a writer, and so this is about fulfilling a dream that was furloughed. You know, young boys like me growing up in 80s Glasgow, this wasn't ever anything I would have dreamt of. And in fact, I was sort of turned away from English and academia towards textiles, which was a much more employable trade. So this has changed my entire life. And,
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Douglas Stuart, winner of the 2020 Booker Prize. Will be speaking to Douglas at length on Monday's Front Row. Not sure if he knows about that yet. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, live from London's Roundhouse, for this year's socially distanced Booker Prize ceremony. My thanks to Bernadine Evaristo and the chair of the judges, Margaret Busby. A wonderful night, I hope you'll agree. Here to play us out are Chineke, but from me, thank you very much and good night.